What are the 4 performance review meetings your organization should be using? I work with organizations helping them improve their performance management processes and their way they execute their strategy and review how well they're doing. And I believe that those regular discussions on different levels of the organization, in terms of reviewing performance, looking into the future, making the right decisions, are vital to all of this. So here are my 4 types of meetings. The first meeting is a strategy review meeting, where you basically look at your strategy and you discuss, is your strategy still relevant? Is it still valid? You talk about shifts in your overall strategic direction. So you say, is your mission and vision, where you want to go, still right? Are the strategic priorities, your big goals for your organizations and for your organization, are they still right? And you basically get together as a group of senior decision makers, usually the executive board of an organization. You might bring in some business analysts and your performance team who understands some of the key trends in the industry and for your business and understands your competition. And then in this room you have, and maybe you do this once a year, where you get together and you then agree your new strategy. Some organizations do this more frequently, so they have maybe half-yearly smaller strategy revision meetings where they just make sure that everything is still on track. Companies like Alphabet, the parent company of Google, actually does this every 3 months, where they just have a health check on how their strategic goals are aligned with what they need to do as a business. So the first one, the strategy revision meeting, is where you define and challenge your strategic direction. The second one then is a strategic performance preview meeting. And what I see in businesses is that they have regular meetings where the executive team gets together and then looks at KPIs, they look at their data, and then they discuss how well are we now delivering our strategic goals. But in practice, these are very often called performance review meetings, and therefore their focus is purely on the past. The data that is being presented is usually the last quarter. You track whether you're on performance compared to targets that you're trying to hit, and so on. What I believe needs to happen is that this emphasis needs to shift into the future. Again, companies like Google now do this really effectively, where they use questions around their strategic goals. So they identify the question that they need to have an answer to, and then they bring in data. But the vast majority of this meeting is spent talking about the future. So they might spend 20% of the meeting talking about the data, what the data is showing them, but then the majority should be focused on the future. So these meetings look maybe 3 months ahead, and you think about, okay, what projects are on track, which ones are not, where do I need to reallocate resources. So they are the kind of decisions you need to make based on a preview of your strategy execution. The third meeting is an operational performance improvement meeting. So what I find in practice is that those two, these strategy preview meetings and these more operationally focused performance improvement meetings, where you look at more operational data, you look maybe a week ahead, a few days ahead, even today, you identify priorities, you identify fires you have to put out. What I see in practice is that those sometimes compete. Organizations don't separate the strategic discussion out from the operational discussion. The operational discussion then looks at all the big firefighting problems that are occurring in your business, and it then crowds out the strategic discussions that need to take place. Some organizations like HSBC are now not only separating those meetings out, but making them a very different format. So the strategic performance preview meeting is where you sit around a board table. It is more formal. You then have presentations, you then have discussions, and you make decisions about the future. The operational performance improvement meeting is much more energetic, more dynamic, and actually HSBC decided that they are stand-up meetings. So they're coming in, they're highlighting some of the issues that are occurring today or tomorrow or this week, and then you make short-term decisions. So these meetings is where you bring in your team members, your heads of business units and their teams, and you make decisions about what needs to be done this week or today or tomorrow. Another good example is our police forces that usually have these operational meetings once a day or once a week to identify shorter term priorities. The final type of meeting is then a personal performance improvement meeting. And they would replace some of the broken ways organizations often have, these annual personal development reviews or your one-to-ones that are usually scripted, where you follow a script, where most people dread them. They need to be replaced by more regular meetings with your line managers, where you then again sit down and say, okay, what are my goals? How do they shift? How do they align with the corporate goals? And then you talk about what support the management, the organization can give individuals to actually improve performance. So for me, those 4 meetings will make a real difference. They make sure that your strategy is right once a year or so, where you use the executive team. Then you make sure your strategy gets executed on a strategic level. So you get the executive team together with some of the performance analysts and performance management teams, where you have these monthly performance preview meetings, and then you separate them out from the more operational weekly, daily meetings where you look at performance, and again where you have a more constructive one-to-one performance improvement meetings. Again, the reason they're not called performance reviews but performance improvement is that, again, I'm trying to shift the emphasis from the past to the present or the future. We say, okay, what do we now need to do differently? What developments do I need? What projects do I need to shift? How do my own priorities shift in the future? Hopefully this will be useful. I have written about this in quite a lot of detail, so if you head to my website at bernhardmar.com, you can find articles that explain those meetings in more detail, or you can head and browse my channel here on YouTube to find out other videos that will hopefully help you with this.